Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Property Manager. This is episode number 63. I am Eric Worral, your co-host, and joined always by Andrew Schultz. How you doing, Andrew?
Good. How are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty good. Wednesday morning, a little bit of snow on the ground already. The life
Do
of
you
a
have snow?
Buffalonian. Yeah, just like a little frosting on some of the leaves.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say we got like a little bit of a dusting up here, but the sun's out, so it all melted off already.
Yeah. Well, this week we have, I believe, 5 questions that we're going to go over because last week I had a little snafu with the microphone not working. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go through 5 questions. And if anybody has any questions, comments, anything they want to add as we're going through, kind of like Andrew did right here. Andrew says hello, or Andrea. Sorry, Andrea. Hello. You can ask those questions and we'll pull them up on screen and go through them. So, why don't we get to it, Andrew?
Sounds good.
All right. So the first one, this one comes from Joel. So Joel asks, he says that this month is the 6th late month, and the primary breadwinner, speaking of the tenant, is out of work right now. He expects an offer soon and has a verbal. How much leeway would you give here, or do I finally lay down the notice to vacate on the 10th? After the non-payment early this year, I did not renew the lease as an annual, but went to month to month.
So with it being month to month, I would probably just issue a 30-day notice to terminate the lease or whatever the requirement is in Joel's state. I don't remember if he mentioned his state in the question.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go with an eviction because there's no reason to on a month-to-month tenancy. I would say just terminate the lease, tell them that they have to move out. And then if they don't move out at that point, you can start looking into an eviction or something like that. The caveat would be if this guy's job offer does wind up coming through and you are able to re-verify his application, I would make him reapply for the apartment essentially. And if they wind up requalifying, he's got the job and everything lined up, then maybe consider leaving him there on that month-to-month lease. Mm-hmm. I guess it depends on what your tolerance for pain is. I mean, 6 late payments in a 12-month period it's half. That's 50% of the time they're late. So it doesn't sound like they're going to be real super reliable. I guess it depends on what your pain tolerance is and how long you want to drag it out. If it's me and it's this time of year, I would probably be considering that strongly, just because going into winter is going to be a lot harder to find a tenant.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So, yeah, I think Joel said that he tries to work with his tenants as best as he can, which is a nice thing to do. But yeah, it's trying to figure that blend, I guess, that works for you because not everyone's just going to be, these are the rules and you're out. Some people like to kind of bend a little bit, but yeah, and considering what time of the year it is, I think is a really good point. So
yeah, absolutely.
Probably depends on where he is too, right? Because if he's in Florida, that might not mean anything, but up here in Western New York, it's getting harder to run out of place. So
absolutely.
Okay. Let's move to our next question. This comes from Liz. So Liz asks, she says that she's looking for advice, please. She has this one's a late paying tenant too, right? Habitually late tenant swears rent was paid by dropping it through the mail slot after hours Friday. Office staff is certain there was no mail when the office opened Monday. So it sounds like we got a case of a property manager, probably on site, it would be my guess or something. And tenants, trying to, it sounds like the tenant's trying to pull something to say that they paid rent, but
right. Yeah, I mean, if it's not in my hand, I don't have it. It's that simple. If it's not in our office and received by our office, then it hasn't been received, and it's on the tenant to make sure that the rent is paid. Hopefully, it wasn't a cash payment or something like that. That would kind of suck. Hopefully, it's a money order or something where that can be tracked. Or if it's a personal check, the tenant can cancel the check and issue a new one, whatever the case may be. But until it's received in the office and one of our staff has it in hand, we don't consider it received.
Yeah. My brother's got a duplex, and he had a tenant once claimed to send him cash through the mail for rent that was late, and my brother he spilled.
I definitely just
nice. But
I don't even have like napkins near me to clean myself up.
Well, why don't we let you get gathered here while I say hello to Mia, who's watching. Hey, Mia.
Do you have any napkins?
Andrew's trying to clean himself up.
No.
This is why live video.
Yeah, right. Everything always goes perfectly in live video.
Do this. There's no editing of this.
I'll just use
see all of our flaws.
There we go. We'll just use our coat to clean ourselves off.
All right. Well, as you clean up that coffee spill, Sarah asks, does anyone split the security deposit? If so, what are your terms? Thanks in advance. I always like it when they finish it with thanks in advance. I feel like it's just a very, pleasant way to ask.
Pleasant way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. In advance.
if I remember correctly, this was one where they had the first month's rent, but they didn't have the full security deposit. They wanted to split it over 2 months or something like that. Whenever somebody asks us that question, the answer is always a firm no. We want security and first month's rent paid in full prior to move in.
Mhm.
And then if they're a tenant that falls under our standard qualification guidelines, usually it'll wind up being either security first and last, or security like a double security in first month, or whatever the case may be. Whatever it is that you're using, whatever your standard is, don't deviate. Make sure you get the money up front. If they don't have it now, they're never going to have it. So don't play the game and split a security deposit, or you'll never receive the other half of it, and eventually you're going to need that security deposit to cover some repairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Lee put it pretty short and sweet here. Never split security deposit.
Yeah, it never works out. It'll never go in your favor. I 100%
You know what?
guarantee
You should just get he's got Charlie Brown for his profile picture here.
Mhm.
You just need to get those Charlie Brown ears once somebody starts talking about splitting security deposit. It's just,
Wah, 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 wah.
I can't understand what you're saying. No, I don't do that.
Fun
So,
fact: Charlie Brown Christmas Special is my favorite Christmas movie.
oh, I thought I was going to get an actual fact, not a personal opinion.
No, it is the best
That's
Christmas
not even,
movie,
no,
but it's also a
that's,
fact that it's my favorite Christmas movie.
well, I believe you that it's a fact that it's your favorite, but I would say that you're wrong in saying it's the best Christmas movie when you have National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
I thought you were going to say Die Hard.
Hey, Margaret, what's going on? Well, hope you're doing well out in Colorado. So we got two other questions here. This one's a good one. It's very timely for this time of year. Sarah asks, different Sarah, has anyone had any experience with spray foam insulation in an old house in the walls, good or bad?
So if it's an older house, spray foam insulation in an old house in the walls, it sounds like she's talking about using the spray foam insulate as opposed to like a bat insulation.
Mm-hmm.
I would almost always go for the spray foam over a bat insulation, especially in like an older house, simply because older houses have a tendency to leak a lot more air than what newer construction does, and the spray foam helps to limit that a great deal. It's if you're at a point where you're opening walls up, exterior walls, and doing like a rehab or something like that, spray foam might run you a little bit more than the bat insulation, but I think you're going to find that you wind up with a much higher insulation value, a much higher R value, simply based on the fact that in a lot of older homes, the exterior walls aren't as thick as what they are in new construction. And a lot of times when you have that less thickness, you're not going to be able to use the full bat, insulation. So you're going to wind up with a lesser insulation value if you don't go with the spray foam. So I would certainly recommend the spray foam if you're in a position where you're doing a rehab and opening walls and stuff like that. You're gonna see the savings in your heating bills for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I actually have the spray and foam insulation. It was already there in the house, the rental property that I have, but you can kind of just see like the little holes that they kind of cut out. There's in the attic where they just kind of, it's that blow-in insulation.
Oh yeah, the blown-in cellulose type.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't really have any kind of anecdote of how it was before that because it was always like that. But I thought it was nice that they were able to do that without having to completely rip up the entire attic floor. So there's options out there, but yeah. The good ones are going to cost more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean the blown-in cellulose insulation, I'm not sure where that sits in terms of R value because it's all going to depend on the thickness of the wall and how completely they can get it in and stuff like that as well. But any insulation is better than no insulation. Followed by properly installed or improperly installed bat. So if you crush the batting down on a piece of insulation, it actually reduces the R value of that insulation. Mm-hmm. Just because it doesn't have the thickness there to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I would say, no insulation, improperly installed bat, properly installed bat, and then probably the cellulose, and then the spray foam is going to be at the top of that, I would have to think. I'd have to look at the R values of everything to be sure, but I would think that would be accurate.
Okay. We got a good, I don't know if Margaret is dealing with this scenario or just curious about what would happen, but this is kind of piggybacking off of the security deposit question. So she said, let's say hypothetically a couple moves in together. After a month, she kicks him out. So the couple splits. There's the security deposit question. She wants a new contract without him. He has sufficient income, by the way. What about the security deposit that was paid by, I presume, both of them when they both signed the lease? So have you ran into a situation like this where two people paid a security deposit, one person left during the middle of the tenancy? Does that affect the security deposit at all, in your opinion?
Hang on one second. I was looking to see because I saw another comment from her.
I
Okay,
think
it's just a duplicate of the same
yeah.
comment. All right, so a couple moves in together. After a month, she throws him out, and then there's a question on the security deposit. He has sufficient income, but does she have sufficient income?
I think the weird thing is right, like, to you, it's just the relationship to the tenant and the landlord or property manager. So
mhm.
you're not going to give half of the security deposit back just because they split.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
if
The
the
security
tenant
deposit's the
wanted to,
deposit regardless.
yeah,
And realistically speaking, even if the female half kicked the male half out of the place, he's still a party to that lease, whether or not he's living there or not.
mhm,
So I guess this boils down to, do you want to release the male half from the lease and just rent to the female half? If that's the case, then I would say that the female half and male half need to work out something between the two of them with regards to the security deposit, and
yeah.
have them sign off on a letter saying that at the end of the lease term the security deposit in full is due back to the person living in the apartment.
Mhm.
um
Yeah, I
just
tend to
and just
side
keep it
with,
on hand.
yeah, I think I side with V on this one, who's just said, she just has to pay him his portion
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
deposit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean,
yeah,
let them handle it between themselves, but make sure you get something documented and signed by both of them,
yep.
indicating that when the lease ends, that the security deposit's going back to her.
Hmm.
And then as far as I'm wondering if this person, because the original comment said that he, the one who's not living there, had sufficient income, but I'm wondering if she, the one who is living there, does have sufficient income. You might have to go
Yeah.
back and look at applications or rescreen or something like that, just to make sure you're not letting someone remain in the apartment that simply can't afford it or something along those lines.
Yep. All right. So maybe we'll have a few more comments coming in on that one, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like let them sort it out and document it through the process.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I always like seeing these comments come up in the RentPrep for Landlords Facebook group. And this one came from Erica. And she just said, this wasn't really a question. She was just saying, she's thinking about purchasing a fourplex, but now I'm scared. What if I can't rent the units out? Then I'm
Mm-hmm.
stuck with a mortgage I can't afford. I always like seeing these because it's cool just to see somebody kind of explain the fear that they have going through the process of becoming a landlord or possibly adding to their portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell Erica if she was asking you about this?
So, I mean, if the numbers work on the deal, if she's done her analysis on the deal and the fourplex works, chances are you're not going to need all four units, 100% full all the time in order to make the deal work. You got to factor in a vacancy rate and stuff like that anyway. If the numbers work on paper and it's a good deal, then I would have no question, no concerns moving forward. Just make sure that you stockpile some cash away for, several months of mortgage payments, several months of operating expenses on the property, so that you don't wind up getting hung up, at the end of the day, if you do have a couple that are sitting vacant because you're working on them, or it's a bad time of year to find a tenant, or whatever the case may be. Just protect yourself. Make sure you've got ample cushion there in your account to cover those expenses for a few months. And as long as the numbers work, I mean, grow your portfolio. You might as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's calculators you can find online. I know Bigger Pockets has a good amount of them
Mm-hmm.
that you can use just to kind of analyze a property. So definitely take the time to go through that, read some content, make sure you're making a good decision there. And hopefully, if you're working with, whether it's a real estate agent or somebody that can kind of help you too and get a
Mm-hmm.
second opinion on it before you pull the trigger. But
Right.
at the end of the
Yeah, I
day,
mean, it's when you're analyzing one of these deals, there's a few things that are commonly overlooked by people when they're analyzing an apartment deal. A lot of people forget to factor in for vacancy rate, management, maintenance, things like that. Even if you're self-managing it, you should plan for management, because there may come a time where your portfolio grows too large for you to manage everything. There may come a time where you're unable to manage it. You get sick or something happens and somebody else has to step in. So you need to make sure that your deal works, not only with the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, and your fixed expenses, but you need to make sure that you have the set asides for management, maintenance, and vacancy as well, to make sure that the deal truly works.
mm,
So don't get caught in that trap. Make sure you do a full analysis of the deal before you make your offer, before you buy it.
okay, cool. Just circling back, Margaret did say, I'm going to point right to the comment.
Yep. Well, it's actually up. It's up.
It's up?
Yeah.
It's up for you?
Well, on my screen, it's up.
For me, it's down.
Right
I would
here.
go like right here, and I can't do the whole screen. I can say like kind of like that little ball, it drops where it goes sufficient incomes. But yeah, they do both have separate sufficient incomes. So
yeah, I mean, I would probably just at that point, it's up to Margaret at the end of the day. Right now, she has 2 tenants on the lease, whether they're both living there or not. If you want to let the male half out, I would say release the apartment to the female half only. Security deposit, they need to figure that out on their own. If you're releasing him from the lease, he needs to sign something saying that he's being released and has no further obligation to the place. And then between the 2 tenants, they need to decide what they're doing for the security deposit and present to Margaret a letter indicating who the deposit is going back to at the end of the lease. So I'm assuming what's going to happen there is, female half is going to buy out male half's portion of the security deposit. The 2 of them sign a simple letter saying at the end of the lease, the security deposit goes back to the female half. You keep it on file and, move on with your life. Get your new lease signed with your just the 1 tenant and go forward.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Just a quick hello to Jen Kuhn. How you doing?
Hey, Jen.
And then I thought we had a good question here. I don't know if we'll be able to answer right now because this one's, it's one of those sticky widgets. But V said that in Denver County, starting next year, immigration status is a protected class. Any ideas on tips on screening tenants if you think someone is illegal? I sometimes rent to an illegal alien, but I had one deported last year. So I'm trying to find ways to protect me and comply with the law.
Boy, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the same thing in Erie County because of the new fair housing law that was just passed here in Erie County. They added immigration status is now a protected class. Lawful source of income, including a Section 8 voucher, is now a protected class. And there was a third one. I think it had to do with. No, it wasn't animals. I think it was sexual orientation, maybe, or something like that. I'd have to go back and pull the exact law up. But yeah, immigration status is now considered a protected class in Erie County as of I think May or June of this year. In terms of screening a tenant, a prospective tenant that you have an unknown immigration status, we require a credit and background check on everybody. If we can't pull a credit and background check, what are we supposed to do? So I don't have a good answer for you, unfortunately, V. This is something that I've kind of batted around with a couple of other property managers, and none of us really have a good solution for it, to be completely honest with you. I guess you just screen them down as best you can and then make a decision based on the information that you have available to you. But it's going to be tough when they don't have a social security number. It's how are you supposed to run a credit and background check on somebody that's doesn't exist essentially?
It kind of becomes almost that like discrimination chicken and the egg scenario where it's like, well, are you discriminating because you won't give an apartment to somebody who doesn't have a social security number? But it's like, well, yeah, you are, but maybe you're discriminating against people who are, illegally in the country. So I don't know. Yeah,
that's a tough one. That's definitely a sticky situation, and I really don't have a good answer for it. We haven't come across that scenario yet. Unfortunately, we haven't come across that scenario yet because I like to have a plan before we find ourselves in a situation.
Sure.
And I don't have a plan for that yet.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll poke around and see if there might be some attorneys who might have some insights on that one, V. And if I do hear anything back on that, I will tag you in the group and let you know. Okay. Well, that concludes episode number 63 of Ask a Property Manager. I'll throw it on the bottom scroll again. Yeah, fancy, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's all for this week. Andrew, thank you for your insights and your time. And
absolutely.
Until next week, if anybody has any questions, always ask them in the RentPrep for Landlords Facebook group. People are willing to help out, answer questions, and we'll pick one out here and there too, and talk about it in the next week's episode. So have a good rest of your week, Andrew.
You as well, Art.
All right. Take care, everybody.